So why are we getting this key warning? After all, it looks like everything works. Well, React has a special concept when it comes to rendering lists of data, a concept which exists to ensure that React is able to update and render such lists efficiently without performance losses or bugs which may occur. And I want to show you which problem we have with the current implementation. If you have a look at your developer tools and you go to the Elements tab there, you can inspect your list here, which is this list of divs. We could change this to a list with list items, but for the moment I'll stick to these divs here. And if we now have a look at this list here, then you should watch the part here on the right in the developer tools as I add a new item. A book 2, for example, for $39.99. If I add that, watch these divs on the right. Did you see what happened? This last item flashed. And if an item flashes here, it means that it was edited or added by the browser. Now it's strange that the last item flashed because actually the new item was added as the first item, the topmost item in this list. To understand what's going on, let me expand this first item, a book 2 which I just added, and let me add a third item here. Like this. Let's add this and click add expense. And you see this also flashed. If not, rewind and go back a couple of seconds and you'll see that this h2 tag of the first item also flashed when I added this new item. So what actually happens here when I add a new item is that React renders this new item as the last item in this list of divs and updates all items and replaces their content such that it again matches the order of the items in my array. And this is not great. This is happening because to React, all these items look similar, and it only sees that my array changed, that it's now longer than before, and hence it simply renders an additional div and it adds that at the end, and then it simply walks through all the items and updates the content inside of every item to match the array content again. The final result therefore is correct here, but from a performance perspective this is not great because all items are visited and updated, and it can even lead to bugs. If the expense items would be stateful items, and we would have some state managed inside of that, then if, for example, our first item, if it has a certain state, if we add a new item, the old first item would be overwritten with the new first item. Hence, any state changes we might have had in there would be lost. So besides potential performance issues, we could also run into bugs. So that is a problem. And the question therefore is, why does React behave like this? The answer is because it has no other way. It currently simply checks the length of the array and then has a look at the number of items that were already rendered. The individual items all look similar to React though, so it can't know where a new item should be added or anything like that. That's why we get this warning. Because we have a way of telling React where a new item should be added. And we do that by going to the place where we output our list of items, so this map method here, and we then add a special prop to this item here. And that's the key prop. This is not a prop we are using inside of expense item, but instead it's a prop you can add to any component, no matter if it's a custom component by you or if it's a built-in HTML element. You can always add this. And if you do add it, if you add the key to your component or HTML element, then you can help React identify the individual items. For that, you need to set a unique value per list item. And that, for example, in this case here, would be the expense ID. Because in our expenses array, every item has a unique ID. And if you wonder what you do if you have no unique ID, then you could use the second argument, which you get here for the function you pass to map, which is an automatically managed index. Though it's discouraged to use that, since with that you can still run into bugs because the index for a given item is always the same and not directly attached to the content of the item. For the ID that's different, every item with a certain content has a clear unique ID. And in reality, it turns out that in most scenarios, you do have some unique ID, because typically you are rendering some data which comes from a database or anything like that, and there you work with unique IDs anyways. So finding some unique identifier is no problem. And you can use any primitive value as a unique identifier. Any number or string, that can be unique identifiers. So here I add this key pointing at expense ID, and once we do that, if we reload, we no longer get that warning. And if I now inspect my list here again, and I inspect the title of the currently first item, if I now add a new item again, like this book, you will see that this h2 tag did now not flash. Instead, this div flashed, and this div was also now added at the beginning of the list correctly, this div here I mean, as it should be. Because now React is able to uniquely identify all these items, and it's therefore aware not just how long the array is, but also where which item should be placed, and it's able to update this list in a more efficient way. So long story short, you should always add such a key when mapping out lists of items. And I hope I could explain why that matters. You don't need to know why, it's enough if you add it, but I think it's always important that you also do understand what's going on behind the scenes and why you're doing something.